Shalom Aleichem, good morning, Chadesh, Yameinu, Kekedem. It's great to be back. I want to dedicate this year for the Refuah Shlema of Nesanel ben Rivka, Besoch Sh'ar Cholei Yisrael, and for the Hatzlacha of Ben Zion ben Dosa, him and his family. We have Parshos, Tazria, and Metzora. Maybe this is to compensate that last week we didn't have a shir. So we'll speak about Inyanim of Brit Mila and Lashon Hara, that stems from the Tzarat, which is discussed in our Parshos. Uvayom Hashmini Yimol Besar Olasoi. 8th day, you got to do the Mila, even if it falls on Shabbos. Mitzvah Deraisa on the 8th day, but only on the 8th day. Baby was sick, and they weren't able to do the Mila, and now it's 2 weeks later, and doctor says, okay, no problem, the Moyel agrees, we can do the Brit Mila. We do not do it on Shabbos, we have to push it off and wait until Sunday. Pashut. What if somebody didn't listen to us? He did a Mila Shelo Bizmana, which means the 9th day, 10th day, 20th day, whenever it is, not on the 8th day, and he did it on Shabbos. The Rambam writes, one who does Mila Shelo Bizmana on Shabbos has a new title. He's called a Mumar. Why is he a Mumar? He violated Shabbos. Mumar. Shulchan Aruch, Yoredea, Reish, Samech, Dalet, Seif, Aleph, and Hilchos Mila, Paskins. If a Goy does a Brit Mila, an Yid, you don't need to come back later and to fix it with a Tafas Dam Bris. You don't need that. The Rema doesn't agree. The Rema says that if a Goy did a Mila on a Yid, you have to come back on Sunday and to fix it. A Tafas Dam Bris. The Rema also writes that a Mumar's status is just like a Goy.
The Goy did it on Shabbos?
No, a Goy does a Mila. You need to go and fix it. You need to do a Tafas Dam Bris. By the way, the Rama points out that a Mumar has the same halachic status and he is viewed as a Goy. Now, let's take the two things we combine.
What's that? What's he called?
Mumar. Mumar, like a Meshumad. Now, let's take these two facts and put it together in the same bowl and try to mix, and let's look what's going to happen. A very strange thing. A Yid, nice Yid, comes and he says, I'm a little smarter than the Shulchan Aruch, and I know that it's Mila Shelo Bizmana, but the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants me to do a Brit Mila today. So he goes and he does a Mila Shelo Bizmana on Shabbos. What is he called now? A Mumar. What is his halachic status? A Goy. According to the Rema, you need to come back on Sunday and do a Tafas Dam Bris. You need to fix it. Wait a second. If you need to fix it on Sunday, that means that what he did yesterday was not a complete mitzvah. It wasn't a bris. What is it? It's a kilkul. And on Shabbos we have a rule. Kol ha-mekalkelin, pturin. He didn't do a melacha. Oh, so if he didn't do a melacha, so he's not a mumar. If he's not a mumar and he didn't do a melacha, so you don't need a tafas dam bris. If you don't need a tafas dam bris, it's a mila shlema. Devaldik. Wait a second. If he did a mila shlema yesterday on Shabbos, so he violated Shabbos. So what is he called? A mumar. If he's a mumar, he's a goy. If he's a goy, you need to do a tafas dam bris on Sunday. Oh, you need to do a tafas dam bris on Sunday. That means the mila wasn't shlema. So what did he do? A kilkul. Shabbos kol ha-mekalkelin pturin. Kol ha-mekalkelin pturin? Excellent. So he didn't violate Shabbos. He didn't violate Shabbos. So it's a complete brit. If it's a complete brit, he is a mumar. If he's a This is called a galgal ha-choizer. You're running around, you know, like they put sometimes rats in a lab and they just have them running around and they can never get out of it. Don't know how you can get out of it. If you can figure it out, that'll be great. There is a concept called, I'm sorry? Reb Shimon Shkop says, whenever you find this in halacha, it's called diyun ma'agali, or a galgal ha-choizer. You're spinning around and you can't get out of it. Reb Shimon Shkop says, it doesn't work. There's no such thing. The chalois, to apply a new halachic status in cases like this, just doesn't work. Don't start up with it. It doesn't work. That's his take on it. Many do bring it. Amin Chas Chinuch offers a few. Galgalim Choizrim. The Toyses themselves in Bab Metziel Amid Beis and Zvachim again discuss this idea of what if you lost something and your father lost something and your Rebbe lost something and you find these things. Whom should you go first to return his lost item to? You, your father, or your Rebbe? What's the right prioritization? goes into all kinds of areas like this. It's like galgalachos. He does come out of it, but there are areas on halacha where we have this idea. I think we mentioned this in the past. Maybe we will in the future. It's a fascinating idea that in theory you get stuck. It's a catch-22, and there's no way out.
How do you get out of the Brit Mila?
Don't tell me that his halachic status because of this becomes a muma. For example, you can say, in theory, when does he become a muma? When he took the knife and decided, I'm going to a Brit Mila, he didn't do it yet. When he started cutting, he still didn't do it yet. Only when he's going to complete the Mila, then is if you can apply I know halachic status on him, but you can't. Because he didn't complete the Mila. The Mila will be completed tomorrow. There's all kinds of ways that you can think about it, but lichoira, you get stuck.
So there's no Ivartachas Dam Bris.
Lichoira.
It's completed or it's repaired or it's completed.
There's no half a mitzvah. If you get stuck, Leila Seder, in the desert, with only half a kazait matzah, should we say, well, so go eat what you have? Or should we say, if you don't have a kazait of matzah, you don't have a mitzvah? Machlokes. Regarding isurim, prohibitions, we say chatzi shiur asur min hatoya. Even though you're only punished when eating a kazait chazir and more, but even eating one crumb of a chazir is a complete isur from the Torah. It's just not punishable. You start being punished from kazait and up. It's a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish whether chatzi shiur asur min hatoya is a Torah prohibition, only a rabbinic one. We paskin, it's a Torah prohibition. It's just not punishable for whatever reason. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said from kazait and up. But regarding mitzvahs, we have a machlokes. Should you bichlal engage in this mitzvah when you don't have the entire shear, or you're wasting your time? If you enjoy matzah, go ahead and eat the matzah, but it's not considered that you're doing a mitzvah. Or maybe, if all you have is that, you know what? In Yiddish it's called chaparayim. Try to catch whatever you can. Big machlokes in halacha.
And if you always eat less than a kazayas, you can nibble on it.
If you always eat less than a kazayas, so you never fulfill the mitzvah. Rabbi said, listen to a shayla. Reuven is a Mechalel Shabbos Befaresia with all the Hidurim, Midoraisa Miderabonon. He's very makpid. Very secular, very secular. His son, Yezoiche, became a Baal Shuva. Medakdek, Kala Kevachamura, strict on observance of all the mitzvahs, right? Shimon, his son, Baruch Hashem, last Shabbos, had a baby boy. The bris is going to be Shabbos. Shimon calls his father on Friday. He says, Dad, I would really like you to attend the bris, but I'm not going to invite you. Why don't you invite me to my grandson's bris? He said, because if I invite you, you're going to come by car. You're going to drive on Shabbos. It comes out that I'm causing you to go into your car and to drive from your town to my town. So with all due respect, I'm sorry, but I cannot invite you to my son's bris. His father says to him, Mister, make you an offer you cannot refuse. Honor me to be the sandik, and I'll come 1 hour before Shabbos starts, and I'll stay with you the entire Shabbos, and I'm not going to violate this Shabbos, and I'll leave only Motzei Shabbos. Shimon says, uh-oh. Shimon is very connected to one of Gedolei Ador, maybe a Gadol Ador Mamish. And he was planning to have this Gadol Ador be the sandik in his bris. Why? Because the Rema says in Yoredei Arei Samech Daled Seif Aleph that the minhag is to be mehader u'mechazer, to try and find the greatest tzaddik you can. The Pele Yoetz writes, and others for him as well, that when you have an Adam Gadol, a tzaddik, as the sandak of your son, he infuses the kid from his kedusha and tahara, and it's very, very beneficial for the soul of the child. So Shimon was trying to do this service for his son. He wants his son to grow up to be a big tzaddik and talmid chochem. Now he's going to get stuck with his father as a sandak. It's very nice to prevent him from doing Chilul Shabbos, but why does the kid have to suffer? Shimon, Rabbi said, what should Shimon do?
Give to father.
What's that?
Give to father.
Give to the father. You want to be a tzaddik on the account of your son? Why not have for your son the best tzaddik, the best sandak that you can? Shalom Bayis between a husband and a wife. He doesn't live with his father.
Even though he's not to Mechalel this Shabbat, the fact is he is a Mechalel Shabbat, so how can he give his father?
He violated many Shabbosim, and he's going to continue. He's just saying, this Shabbos I won't.
So how can he give it to his father?
So you're saying Gadol Ador. Get the Gadol Ador, Gadol is a Sandak, right?
Even if it's not the Gadol Ador, but not his father.
Not his father. He's saying his father, you're saying Gadol Ador. Ad sheyagia shlishi v'yachia b'neim.
Can't you compare that with the famous deal in Kedushin, if a person Mekadesh a woman and says, on condition that I'm, perfect tzaddik and the Kedushin.
You're sending us the Kedushim Mem Tes Amud Beis. One who goes to a woman and says, you know what, would you like to be my wife? She says, you? You drive on Shabbos, I saw you last Shabbos. He says, no. Al menat she'ani tzaddik gamu. Really, tzaddik gamu? She says, yeah. So she says, okay, fine. Following week, they see him eating shellfish on Yom Kippur that fell on Shabbos while driving to the beach. Says the Gemara, Mekudeshes. Why not? Mekudeshes! How Mekudeshes? Who told you he wasn't Meharher b'tshuva? When he said, yes, I want to be a tzaddik gamu, maybe he did tshuva. That's what you mean?
Yes.
This guy is not claiming that he's going to change. He says, this Shabbos I'm going to keep.
Maybe.
I don't believe in Ribbon Shel Olam. I'm not going to eat kosher ever again. Every single Shabbos later I'm going to violate twice to compensate for the Shabbos that I kept. This specific Shabbos I'm going to keep. Shkoyach. He's not claiming he's a tzaddik. Definitely not a tzaddik gamu.
I think it's the father, but it's uncomfortable, but it's the father.
I don't care about a person being uncomfortable. I want to know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do.
I think he wants the
Father.
father.
Can you substantiate what you're saying with some reasons?
This Shabbos he's keeping. What's
This Shabbos is keeping. So it's tzaddik. You elevate him to level tzaddik. You elevate him to level tzaddik. What's wrong?
Tshuva is huge level.
He's not tshuva. He wants an honor called being a sandak, so he's willing to be passive and not to violate Shabbos. Where's the tzidkus? Where's the tshuva? Zero tshuva. It's a technical thing. I'm not going to violate Shabbos today. Shkoyach to you. He's not promising he's never going to do it again. Of course he will.
Lo lishma, ta lishma.
Im Yirtzeh Hashem. V'no imar amen.
The father baby treats his own father, so the baby has that schus that his grandfather was.
You're speaking like Rebbe Yosef. You're thinking like Rebbe Yosef Zatzal, the Shaila came to him. So it wasn't this Shabbos, because it's years ago. And Rebbe Yosef says, Pashut! That you have to give it to the father. Why? Preventing a person from the punishment of skila. You know what that's worth? When the Ramah discusses about find the great tzaddik as a sandik, the Peleoitz and other Sfarim, there's an Indian. It's not a mitzvah de'oraisa, it's not a mitzvah de'rabbanon. It's a very big Indian. Why not? When you can. But preventing a yid, who happens to be your father, from the punishment of skila? What's the shaila? And maybe, the baby is not going to lose anything from it. It could be that what you just did now, preventing the father from sinning this Shabbos and skila, is worth $1 billion. Spiritual billions. You know what this is going to do to the kid? And it could be mitzvah, golus mitzvah, and this will just propel the father. I'm not saying it will. He's not telling us, I'm going to keep all the Shabbosim, but it could be that mitzvah, golus mitzvah, and he, hopefully, even though he just declared, I'm going to keep this Shabbos, maybe he will keep other Shabbosim as well. Says Rabbi Yosef, get your father to be the sandik. 2 points. We said before, Gaga Lachoz, something similar. I have a calendar at home. On the calendar it says, this calendar does not require gniza. You don't have to put it in Shemis, suggesting that there's no divrei Torah in the calendar. But wait a second, you just taught me halacha. You're just telling me that something that doesn't have divrei Torah doesn't require gniza. So do I need to put this calendar in gniza or not? If you're telling me that this calendar requires gniza, so this halacha is a lie. Because you told me you don't need to put this calendar in gniza. That's not true. So this halacha is a lie. And if this halacha is a lie, this calendar does not make gniza. And if this calendar does not need gniza, so this halacha is correct. And if this halacha is correct, so you need to put this calendar in Gniza. Do you have to put this calendar in Gniza or not? So you're saying parts of the calendar require Gniza. And this statement says this entire calendar is Gniza free, is exempt from Gniza. Do you have to put in Gniza or not?
You should have worded it differently.
What's that?
You should have worded it differently.
I don't know who worded it. A big Talmid Chochem. Do you need to put this in Gniza or not?
Those words require Gniza.
Is it a halacha? Are you teaching me a halacha? If it's a halacha, an independent halacha, halacha requires Gniza. What if you take a paper on a Sunday and you write on it, today is not a day that you are not allowed to carry from a private domain to a public one. Is this a halacha? Do I need to put this paper now in Gniza? A little louder.
If you have Hashem's name, that's
You need Hashem's name. I can write a whole chapter in the Rambam without Hashem's name. You want to tell me I don't have to put it in the Gniza?
You didn't write a whole halacha. It's not a full halacha.
It's not?
It's only the application of the halacha.
Uh-huh.
He's saying this is the thing that doesn't require Gniza. But the halacha...
So many seifim in Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam, which is an application of the mother halacha, it's not halacha.
Yeah, not require Gniza.
So parts of Shulchan Aruch, you don't have to put a Gniza.
Yeah, it would have to have said that this, because it has no Shem Hashem, it requires no Gniza. No, it doesn't require
It's not just Shem Hashem that needs Gniza.
No,
Divrei
it
Torah.
has no Divrei Torah, therefore it doesn't require Gniza. But it's just a point.
I would like to say the same. The problem is there's Sefer Me'or HaShabbos Chelek Hey. He brings a tshuva from Rabbi Yosef. A wrapper of a wafer, bamba, bisli, whatever it is, a snack, that says on it, the bracha is she'akol. The bracha is mezoinis, you have to put in Gniza. He even writes that if it says, beis, period, mezoinis, which means birkato, mezonot, you have to put in Gniza. I don't know what Rabbi Yosef will say if it says bet mem mem. Boire minei mezoinis. That's an acronym. I don't know what he's going to say based on this. Which is mind-boggling Kiddush. What about those yogurts that on the cover it says you're not allowed to cut this to separate the two yogurts together. Not allowed to separate in Shabbos, or cut it before Shabbos. You want to tell me I have to take this off and I have to put it in the Gniza?
How about chocolate?
There's not a halacha? You're teaching me halacha. You're not allowed to cut this on Shabbos.
It's for sure not.
Not.
We have a clear example of when something is kosher. What are you telling me? You're telling me that,
Oh.
that this halacha...
By the way, do you know that there's foods in the world that are kosher and foods that are not? So this requires a Gniza? If I just wrote this sentence down, you need to put in Gniza? Of course not. It's just information.
Kashrut symbol should be Gniza also, based on that. That's exactly the point. That you're saying how I applied the halacha, not the...
Very good. You have 10 pages in front of you. 5 over here and 5 over here. They're upside down. You don't know what's in them. And it says on top of this requires Gniza. This does not require Gniza. You don't know what this is talking about. So you needed to put in Gniza the one that says this does not require Gniza? L'choira, when I'm just telling you information, and it's not a halachic matter that I discussed and I reached a conclusion, l'choira, it doesn't require Gniza. Somebody told me that he was arguing with his friend. He was arguing. And he just said, "You're not my rabbi." So he says to me, with that I was mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Why? In order to become my rabbi, you need to teach me halacha. What I basically told you when I said, "You're not my rabbi," is I never learned any halacha from you. Oh, so I just taught you halacha. So I was mekayim mitzvah Talmud Torah. I don't know, maybe now he becomes his friend's rabbi because he just taught him halacha. I'm not so sure about that. Adam kiyeh be'or b'soroi. If a person has lesions, there's 3 types of lesions that the Torah discusses. Se'es, sapachat, or ba'eret. Says Reb Moshe Shterbuch, Shlita, Tuv Ta'am Das. These 3 allude to certain people in the way they transfer or say information which is the wrong type. Lashon hara. Se'et is from the language to rise. Lehit naseh. A person wants to rise over others, so he says Lashon hara to put them down. What is sapachat? Lehistapeach. Annex. To join. To be with. Or lehisachef. play on words and you switch the letters around. To be with those wrong people. He is in the wrong crowd and he joins the wrong people. And therefore he speaks Lashon Hara. Baheres from the language of clarity, Behirut. No, I just want the truth to be out there. I just want to reveal and to clarify certain matters. And the Torah says about all these, Negat Saras, who don't try to justify, where you just want to spread some juicy Lashon Hara. Each one of these three is still a Negat Saras, and it is also. So we know Saras comes from Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is an Isur Deoraisa. It's clear that Lashon Hara is an Isur Deoraisa about people who are alive. Can one say Lashon Hara about people who are no longer with us? Chas v'sholom! But what's the source? Did the Torah, when the Torah said, don't speak Lashon Hara, did the Torah mean people who are alive, people who are dead, or both? Both. Who told you?
Don't speak bad.
Machlokes between. You just created a machlokes in Am Yisrael. We don't like machlokes. The Torah discusses people who are alive. The Torah never discusses people who are dead. There's no Isur Torah to speak Lashon Hara about dead people, and more than that. There's not even an Isur Derabanan. But people are so careful. What are you saying? The guy is no longer here. Not allowed to say this. Where does it come from? The Rema brings in Hilchos Yom Kippur. Simen Taf Reish Vav in Shulchan Aruch or Chaim in Seif Gimel. There's a takanas da kadmoinim and a cherem. Takanas of kadmoinim. It's a takana. It's not a deraisa, not a derabanan. Takana. You know, people love saying it's the next three pashos. Achrei Mois, when somebody died, kedoshim emo, say he was holy. Oh, he was so holy, he was so holy. But that's only after a person dies. When a person is around, I have a lot to say about him. When he dies, chas v'sholom, and it's only a takana. Why is that? Why is it that people are so afraid, sensitive, so careful not to say Lashon Hara about a person who's no longer with us, but a person who's right here next to me? No problem at all. Doesn't make any sense. It's a deoraisa. It's only a takana sakadmonim and acherem. Could be that we love saying Lashon Hara about people who are around with us because we're always competing with others for certain things. If it's my neighbor, I'm competing with him for that elusive parking spot. There's only one. If I'm going to put him down, it's just not right what he's doing to me. Other people, I'm contending about the same job opportunity. It's my neighbors, it's my family. I want to look good in the eyes of others, so I have to put somebody else down. But somebody who's dead, what am I competing with him? I'm not competing with him, not contending anything. We don't have anything in common. So what do I care to be viewed as a tzaddik who is very careful in saying Lashon Hara, chas v'sholom? Why? Because I have nothing to lose. But a person who's still with me, I have a lot to lose. So I have to make sure to put him down so I can gain. Maybe that's why, but it doesn't make any sense. If we have to be extremely careful, and we are, saying Lashon Hara people who are dead, how much more so, Kal v'chomer, ben bno shel Kal v'chomer, that we have to be careful not saying anything derogatory, any Lashon Hara about people who are still alive.
Earlier you said that if it's dead, it doesn't matter. But the fact he's dead, okay. The fact you spoke Lashon Hara about a dead person, you're getting used to speaking Lashon Hara.
There is a dispute among the Achronim, are you allowed to say Lashon Hara about a goy? The Torah speaks about us, about our family. Don't say anything negative about your family. Can you speak Lashon Hara about a goy? Machlokes. Lichoira, there's no problem. The Torah never discussed it. Even Jews who are Reshaim, you're allowed to speak Lashon Hara about them. But some Achronim want to say, yeah, it's true. Technically speaking, you're allowed to. But what's going to happen to you when you do this? You're training yourself to become a Baal Lashon Hara, but it's not an Isur. That's not the definition of the Isur. It's a sensitivity that we should have in order to avoid, it's like a fence that we're erecting around it, but it's not a derabbanan.
What do we make of the Amorite King Achav?
I'm sorry, say it again?
The Amorite who said tomorrow we'll talk about Achav.
Yeah.
What do we make of that? Is that a
Was Acha Barasha or Tzaddik?
Rasha?
What's the problem? We just said, Lashon Hara applies, Be'oise Maise Amcha, when he is with you in Torah mitzvahs, not somebody else. Just like Ve'afta le'reacha kamocha. Who's reacha? Reacha b'mitzvahs. One who's with you in mitzvahs. If you think about it, the word Lashon Hara doesn't really make sense in Hebrew. Either it should be Lashon Ra, or Halashon Hara, or Lashon Ra'ah. What is Lashon Hara? It doesn't really work. And therefore some suggest that we're saying it wrong. Is that Lashon Hara? It's Lashon Hara. That tongue of that bad person. Lashon of whom? It's the Lashon of Hara, that bad person who speaks Lashon Hara. But L'choira, technically speaking, it makes sense.
I thought you're not supposed, for example, to speak about Teshuvah, what they did in the past.
Right.
But then a thought occurs to me, in Sefer Malachim, we learn about Melech Menashe. He was about Teshuvah.
Machloikis, the type of Teshuvah that he did. At the end we say even he has a share in the world to come, but there is an opinion there before, in Sanhedrin and Perek Chelek, that he does not go to the world to come. Chaim Kanievsky has a Muridik Chiddush on this matter, and he says that a secular guy, you can speak Lashon Hara about a person who's a Rasha, right? But that Rasha cannot speak Lashon Hara about a person who's a Rasha like him. Why? Because when we say Be'oise Maise Amcha or Be'reacha, Reacha is a person like you. So we normally understand it to be a frum person like you. But it also goes the other way. A Rasha like you can't speak Lashon Hara about him. You're in the same group. In other words, don't speak about people in your group. Outside your group, you can speak about him. Of course, the Rasha cannot speak Lashon Hara about a tzaddik. That's clear. But that's, I think, a great chiddush. What is the best profession to be accepted to? There's so many different industries, so many occupations. The best vocation one can choose, I think, to be appointed as a new Rav. Why? Being a Rav is a great position, but what's so special about it? The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, "En Adam oile legdula," one does not rise to a position of prominence, ela im ken, moichalin lo kol avonoisav. All his sins are erased, and then he is appointed. Ask Chaim Sofer, why is this so? He became a rabbi. Shkoyach, I hope you do a good job. Why are all your sins erased suddenly? Explains Chaim Sofer, Choivas Alvavos, in Shara Kniya Perek Zayin, Ochos Sadikim in Shara Anava, the Chidah in Dvash Lefi, in the name of the Rema Mipano, Reb Menachem Azar Mipano. This is a strong coalition. And they all say, Magid Mesharim too. Magid Mesharim is the Beis Yosef in his sefer that he wrote, from what the Malach used to reveal to him in Parshas Vayakel. These four Gedolim write, if one speaks Lashon Hara about someone else. Reuven spoke Lashon Hara about Shimon. In that minute, Reuven loses all the mitzvahs that he had, and they transfer them to the heavenly account of Shimon, the one whom he spoke about. Not only that, all the averas that Shimon had are now transported to the heavenly account of Reuven, who spoke about him. Mamish terrible. And therefore, what happens when a person becomes a new Rav? Immediately, people start saying, well, he's not such a big Talmid Chacham. He doesn't know how to speak, this guy. He's not very charismatic. As soon as he appointed to be a Rav, people start talking. What happens back then? Immediately, all his sins are erased. They are transferred to the heavenly account of those people who spoke about them. And therefore, a person who rises to a prominent position, all his sins are erased. In Siyum Masechet, what do you say? Hadanach Masechet is this. And then you say, Yehi Rotzon, Kodesh Baruch Hu, please. She'et Torascha umanuseinu ba'olam hazeh, utehe imanu la'olam haba. Was there any havamina? Why would I think that this tractate that I just toiled on for months, Baruch Hashem was able to do the siyum, will not accompany me to the world to come? Why not? Explains the Brit Mila based on what we said. Because if a person says Lashon Hara, he may lose all the mitzvahs that he had, including this siyum that he just had. So when we say Hadan Lach, in essence, and we're saying Yehi Rotzon, it's a tefillah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, allow me not to stumble on Lashon Hara, because Chalila, I can actually lose this great mitzvah of doing the siyum. So what happens if, in fact, Reuven stumbled? Reuven said Lashon Hara, and he lost all his schusim. You know who Reuven is? Chaim Kanievsky. In Adam Tzadik Ba'aretz Asher Yaseh Tov V'lo Yechet everybody sins. A Reb Chaim Kanievsky, not Reb Chaim Avade, but a big tzaddik who does a siyum on the entire Shas every single year. Said accidentally Lashon Hara. At that point, all the siyumim, 80 siyumim and the entire Shas, every single year, are taken and they put him in the heavenly account of the person whom he spoke about. This guy just won the lottery. A day later, this person, the Talmid Chochem, the tzaddik, wakes up and says, what did I do? What was I thinking? So he goes over to the person whom he spoke about and says, please forgive me. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry what I said yesterday. So should this person forgive him? He's got to be crazy to say, okay, I'm moichel you. You want to lose the 80 new siyumim that he thinks he will never get in his lifetime. He's not a big Talmid Chochem. But he just got billions and billions and billions of spiritual dollars that will accompany him forever and ever. All the siyumim of the Talmid Chochem. Should he say, okay, I'm moichel you? Or not? You're saying yes. Why would you lose such an unbelievable treasure trove that you just found? Why would you say yes? Do you not value the Torah of this Talmid Chacham? What's that? Oh, you're saying he's going to say Lashon Hara about me again? I hope not.
This mitzvah is his master.
Yeah?
The other one is just a transfer.
What type of a maisa is it? This guy toiled for 80 years. And that's worth more than Talmud Torah?
It's his mitzvah. The other one's the other guy.
Now it is his. The Sfarim HaKadoshim promise us, we quoted who they are. Choivas Alvavos, Olchos Tzadikim, Beis Yosef in Magid Meisharim. The Chido brings the Remak Mipano, a strong coalition. It's your mitzvahs now. What do you want to give him up? Says the Ben Ish Chai, let's say all the siyumim that this person has are worth $1 million, saying, I am moichel you. And with that doing Hashavas Aveda, to that lost item, all the siyumim that this Talmid Chochem lost is worth $1 billion, not $1 million. Are you saying it's hard? Great. Mitzvah that comes with sorrow and is difficult to perform is worth even more. The Chikrei Lev writes, what if, in fact, the person did tshuva? The person who said, Lashon Hara does tshuva. Do you lose all the siyumim, all the mitzvahs that you just got from his account? How does it work? So he writes, the person who did the tshuva does not lose them. He actually will regain them. Once he does tshuva, he gets them all back. The Chassam Sofer writes a sim that when he gets an atonement for his Lashon Hara, he gets his mitzvahs back. And in a sefer about eitzes, how to be meritorious in Judgment Day, Chaim Kanievsky, he writes that if the person says, I don't want to be moichel you, that in itself is a sin. You shouldn't make these calculations. Of course you should be moichel. Shas Juvis Eres Tzvi, the Koshik Lover Rebbe, he writes, what do you think? HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do both? If the Sfarim tell you that you gain his mitzvahs, so when you're moichel, he gets back his mitzvahs, but you also get to keep them. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only one who can take $100 and give it to Reuven and to Shimon, and they each get $100. He can take 100, split it in two, and they still $100 to each person. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do that. And you don't lose from saying, I am moichel you. He gets back his mitzvahs, and you get to keep them. The Ben Ish Chai, based on that, writes, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we keep saying, Avinu Malkeinu Kodveinu Besefer Zchuyot. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense if you think about it. You want to be inscribed in the book of mitzvahs, so make sure you do some mitzvahs. What does it have to do with me, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What do you want from me? Some say, I can do a lot of mitzvahs, but I don't really know how they're going to turn out. Example, I give $100 to tzedakah. Do I really know where that $100 is going to? Maybe I gave it on the way. It was lost. The gabbai lost it on the way. The ani lost it on the way. I tried to do a mitzvah. I don't know what's going to happen with it. A person writes a sefer. Do you know how many people are going to learn from it? Maybe it's going to be on the shelf collecting dust. You have no idea. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I did my part. Now you do yours. Kotveinu b'sefer zchuyot. Make sure that what I did, in fact, increases to many, many zchuyot, and that's up to you. It's not up to me. But the Ben Ish Chai says, during a Tazria Metzora, when we all go to each other, say, please forgive me for what I did. I offended you this year. Please, be moichel. And the person says, I'm moichel. Mimele, there can be a lot of zchusim that you used to have, but you lost them during the year because you said Lashon Hara. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kozveinu b'sefer zchuyos, I want to get back my mitzvahs because I was moichel my friends, and my friends were moichel me. So even if I lost all my mitzvahs because I said Lashon Hara, now please give me back my mitzvahs and write me with my mitzvahs. We should be together once again. What's that? Can't hear you. The Chidah in Kiddushin Pei Beis Amud Aleph has a sweet thing. 3 startling words that we find in Kiddushin Pei Beis Amud Aleph. Hatov shebaroifim, the best of doctors, legehenom. He goes to Gehenom. What do you want from him? The guy is saving Jewish lives every single day for years, and you want to send him to Gehenom? What did he do wrong? I think we shared at least, I don't know, 150, 170 different ideas in past years. But now, the Chidah. And the Chidah says, we have nothing against the doctor. It's not talking about the doctor. You know who the best doctor is? The best doctor, nobody comes close. The one who speaks Lashon Hara. He is the best doctor in the world. Why? Because of what we said, that when one says Lashon Hara, he loses all his mitzvahs and he gains all the averos of the person whom he spoke about. Now let's analyze it. Why does the person get sick? Because of the virus? That's heresy. Why did he break his leg? Well, he wasn't careful when he walked down the steps. That's heresy. A person gets sick because of some kind of a spiritual wrongdoing. He did an avera, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends him a message. You gotta fix yourself, fix that body part, do tshuva. That's why the Ramban has a language. Mala roife bebeis yirei Hashem. What is the doctor doing in the house of a person who fears Hashem? If he realizes something is wrong, he's going to do tshuva. Memele, if a person becomes sick because of his averos, when Reuven speaks Lashon Hara about Shimon, and all the averos of Shimon are now taken and are given to Reuven, even if Shimon was sick, he will be healed. He can never become sick again because he is sin-free. Mimele, who's the best doctor in the world? The person who said Lashon Hara is the best doctor in the world. He just healed the person whom he spoke about because he has no averos. Remember, he's going to be healed. Now it's clear. Why does the best doctor goes to Gehenna? Because this type of doctor, where else do you want to send him? The best doctor, Baal Lashon Hara, that type of doctor, in fact, goes to Gehenna. But what's the reason for this? What's the reason that a person said Lashon Hara, he loses all his mitzvahs and he gains all the averos of his friend, the person whom he spoke Lashon Hara about? The Siftei Chaim brings the Michtav Meliyahu B'Eliyahu Dessler. He says it's so beautiful. Why do we speak Lashon Hara? A person usually speaks Lashon Hara because he wants to build himself up by putting somebody else down. You know what this guy did? In other words, I would never do such a thing. I'm a big tzaddik. He is not. He wants to build himself up by destroying his friend. HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his world in a measure for measure fashion. And therefore, he will be destroyed and his friend will be built up. From what? He wanted to put down his friend and to destroy his friend. From him, his friend will be built up. From his mitzvahs that will now be given to his friend, he will be built and he will be destroyed. By what? By the averos of his friend. It's just a perfect measure for measure because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his world. Reb Avraham Gelechovsky was once walking back Shabbos morning from shul with a bunch of talmidim around him. 10:30 a.m. They're schmoozing in Divrei Torah. A guy comes over and says, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? Avraham Kanievsky Zatzal looks at him, and it's clear that this guy woke up maybe 5 minutes ago, maybe 6 minutes ago. He can barely open his eyes. So Rabbi Kanievsky asks him, did you already have a chance to say Birkos HaTorah? We can't discuss Divrei Torah if you didn't say the blessings of the Torah. And the guy says, no, I didn't. So Avraham Kanievsky says, why don't you go to shul and go daven? This is my address. When you finish davening, come over. I'll schmooze with you as long as you want. Ask me all the questions. We'll spend as much time as you want. Well, Rabbi, thank you very much. That's great. And he walks. They continue walking, and one of the Talmidim says, look at that. It's 10:30 a.m. We are after Shachris. We're after Musaf. We're after a shiur that we had in shul. This guy didn't even say Birkas HaTorah at 10:30 a.m. this morning. And Rabbi Avraham Kanievsky says, you're right. It's true. You're right. This guy did not have a chance yet to say Birkas HaTorah, 10:30 a.m. But guess what? He also still didn't have a chance to say any Lashon Hara this morning. Ay. He's a big Rosh Yeshiva. You know, Ben Azmanim in many places, including in our town, there's Yeshivas Ben Azmanim and many Rabbonim, Rosh Yeshivas come and they give shiurim and divrei chizuk. So this, one of the biggest Rosh Yeshivas, did just that, and he gave a big shiur. Many Talmidei Chachamim came, mostly Avrechim. Big Talmidei Chachamim came to attend his shiur because it's a very high level shiur. And among them was a 14-year-old from Yeshiva Ktana, stutterer, and it was very difficult to understand. He needed a lot of patience to listen to him, to his questions. And he stopped the shiur twice, this stutterer, and asked the Rosh Yeshiva 2 questions. And he listened, and he had patience, and he couldn't believe it. This little kid, 14-year-old, in one shaila that he asked, was mechaven to a shaila of Apnei Yeshua. In the other question, he was mechaven to Rebbe Akiva Eiger. He was very impressed. After Pesach, this Rosh Yeshiva went to Reb Shteiman Zatzal. Reb Shteiman says, where did you give shiurim this week? And he says to him, I was in this yeshiva. I was so impressed. There was a 14-year-old there, surrounded by lions, Talmidei Chachamim. And this kid asked me the best 2 questions from everybody else. I was so impressed. So Reb Shteiman says, why were you so impressed? He says, the kid is a stutterer. He's 14 years old. Yeshiva Ktana. We're talking about lions. Mamish, great Talmidei Chachamim. And they had questions, but his questions were by far much better. So Reb Shteiman says, I'll tell you why that is. Ayid is Kodosh. In the language they speak up there is Kedusha. Most of our sins come by way of our mouth. Lashon Hara, Rechilus, Leitzanus, all kinds of things that we're not supposed to say. Sheker. When we do that, we as if plug the pipes that connect us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're saying this guy's a stutterer. That means he doesn't speak too much. If he doesn't speak too much, his pipes are clean. Therefore, he remains as Kadosh as he was, and it's easier for him to gain level of Kedusha and to be mechaven to the Pnei Yeshua and to Rebbe Akiva Eiger. We have Kedusha. And what really connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to that Kedusha is our mouth. And we must make sure that we keep that most powerful weapon that we have, our mouth, with Kedusha. You know, sometimes you speak to your friend on the phone, can't hear you, you're muffled. The line is breaking up. It's not clear. That's what happens when that line of communication that we use with the Kodesh Baruch Hu is plugged up with all kinds of filth that's not supposed to be there. But if it's not, it's crystal clear. They hear you up there loud and clear. And our tefillis can be accepted, can be granted. The Torah that we learn can be on a much higher level, better quality, better reception. So it's all about the mouth, and we have to make sure that in fact it remains clean, and then we're able to be showered with abundance from above, in Ruchnius and in Gashmius. Parashas Tazria, what does it end with? The last word in Parashas Tazria. Anyone remembers? Zos toiras negat saras. Doesn't sound so good. בגד הצמר או הפשטים או השתי או ערב או כל כלי אור לטהרו או לטמאו. Tuma, that's how you end the parasha. Parashas Metzora. What does it end with? ולאיש אשר ישכב עם טמא. הפטרה. פרשת מצורע. וירמסו עושו העם בשער וימוס. They trampled over him and he died. That's three things that end not such a good note. The Rema writes, Shulchan Aruch Chaim Siman Kuf Lamed Ches Seif Aleph, that you have to start with something good and you have to end on a positive note. How can it be? We just mentioned three things that end on a negative note. There's more. Parshas Noach. How does it end? Vayamos terach becharan. Parshas Vayikra. How does it end? Le'ashmava. One may commit a sin incurring guilt through it. Beautiful. Parshas Kedoshim. Next week. Yirgemu osam demeyam bam. Skila. Parshas Bamidbar. Kevala is HaKodesh v'amesu. Don't see what you're not supposed to see if you're a Kohen. Capital punishment. Parshas Balak. And 24,000 people died in the Magefa, in the plague. Such beautiful things you're ending with. Mamish what the Rema says. Only end on a positive note. What's going on here? There's too many parshas to say it's a mistake. It's a coincidence. Too many parshas. The end of the Torah. Parshas is Zois HaBracha. How does it end? Le'einei kol Yisrael. Rashi. What is it referring to that everybody saw? The smashing of the luchos. That's not so positive. Moshe Rabbeinu took the luchos HaKadosh Baruch Hu made and he said, nah, he broke them. More than that. Some Rishonim, Sefer HaChinuch for example, he breaks up Parshas Mishpatim and he says, don't say Parshas Mishpatim for the entire Parsha that we have. He actually breaks it in two. There's two Parshas. So the first Parsha, Parshas Mishpatim, how does it end? Based on his chiluk. Vayu neshechem almanos, and your wives will be widows, ubenechem, and your sons, Yisraelim, orphans. Oh, such beautiful promises. Oh, mamash gewaldig. Comes the Ben Ishchai, and Rav Pe'alim, Chelek Dalet, Oren Chaim, Simin Mem Beis, and he says, Achidish, when the Rema says that you should always end on the positive note, you know what that ending point is? The guy who got an Aliyah, he says a bracha. Birkos HaTorah. That's how we end. Mimela, there's no shayla. Based on that, he says, Achidish, one who says by himself at home, Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum, if he gets to one of these parshas which end on a negative note, he should take another pasuk from the parsha, a good one, and throw it at the end in order not to end on a bad note. He says the same thing about this Haftarah, Parshas Metzora. Take another pasuk from the Haftarah, a good one, plug it at the end, so you don't finish, because you don't have a bracha when you say Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum, and that's a tremendous chiddush. Shal Shuvas Chayei Halevi Chelek Beis Simen Koyach Kafret, he writes, based on this chiddush of the Rav Pe'alim, of the Ben Ishchai, now I understand, he writes, why in many places they're not choishish. And people stop in all kinds of places, whether it's bad when it ends or it's bad when it starts, and people don't worry. Why? Because anyways, at the end, a guy is going to say a bracha. Once he says a bracha, that's considered the ending point, and in Mele, it's not a shayla. But, Shaul Zeshuvas Mishnah Halachos challenges the Rav Pe'alim. He says, how is this possible? The Rema in Siman Kuf Lamed Ches, which we just quoted, is saying, make sure you end on a positive note, is speaking about Kriyas HaTorah B'tzibur. The Rema didn't know that every time after a person gets an aliyah, he says a bracha? And yet the Rema says, make sure that you end on a positive note. So it must be that the Rema was not talking about the person who got an aliyah, and therefore the Mishnah Halachos doesn't understand the Ben Ishchai. The question itself, why is it that there are some parshos that end on what seems to us not to be so positive? It says, Shal Shuvas Chayei Halevi, and the Hagaos Maharsham in Moed Katan Kuf Ches, Kaf Ches Amud Beis, writes similarly. The entire Torah is actually names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ramban already writes this in the Hakdama to his Torah, and it's already mefurish in the Zohar HaKodesh. The entire Torah, 304,000 letters, 805, are actually combinations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's names. Everything is good, loaded and saturated with blessings. And therefore there's no problem where you stop. Now if you decide to make a stop not where they instructed you, so to our eyes, certain things look negative, make sure you don't stop there. But if the Kadmonim told you to stop in a certain Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, Shvi, or whatever it is, that point, even though it seems to you negative, is actually a blessing. And therefore he says there's no problem to stop no matter where you are. But when you decide to make a stop, follow what the Rema says. The Maor of Hashemesh brings an unbelievable minhag that he used to have. Minhag HaKadmonim, he writes, that the end of Parshas Vayikra, that we said ends with the words Le'ashma Va, guilt. There was a minhag that the entire tzibur, when you finish reading, they all stand up and they yell, Lakel asher shavas mikol ha'maisim bayom hashvi, Rashi Tevos, Le'ashma Va, in order to end on a positive note and not on a negative. And that's a tremendous chiddush. Shaul's Juvis, Mishneh Halachos, back to him again, Chelek Vav and Simon Lamed Beis. He writes two different ways. Why is it that some parshas, as we quoted, don't seem to end on a positive note? First of all, he brings the Magen Avraham in Kuf Lamed Ches Seif Kotten Dalet, and the Mishnah Berurah brings him in Seif Kotten Hey, that if it's something bad that happens to the Goyim, it's not considered bad. And that's why he answers Parshas Noach. Vayamos terach becharan, and he died in Haran. Okay, so what happened? He's not a Yid, as far as we know. There are no Yids. No Yidins in the world at that point. Ra'as hagoyim, bad things that happen to them, is not considered a bad thing. There's no problem. The other thing he says, this is not me'ikar adin. It's a good eitzah. And why is it? Sometimes in the Torah there's all kinds of things that the Baal Koreh writes, he reads out loud, and the guy getting Aliyah may think that he actually means that this should happen to you. Because yesterday they had a major argument or a fight, I don't know what. So the guy gets on the Aliyah and says, uh-oh, the guy's cursing me. So make sure you don't end on a negative note. So he says this only applies when you're speaking beyachid to the person near you. But b'lashon nistar, not relevant. For example, what we quoted, Parshas Kedoshin. Ish or isha, man or woman, if they do a certain thing, d'meihem bam. It's not talking about this guy standing right next to me. Parshas Balak, there was a Magefa, 24,000 people died. I'm telling you a story. You know, back then there was a plague, 24,000 people died. It's nothing to do with the guy standing right next to me. There's no problem. Parshas Bamidbar, certain Kohanim, if they do a certain thing, it's wrong. What does it have to do with the guy standing next to me? In Mele, he says it's not a problem. Shaul Shuvas Yosef Ometz, who is the Chida, he writes a big Chiddush. This whole thing only applies not to the Baal Koreh. If it so happens that the guy who got an Aliyah is actually also going to lane, and that used to be the minhag, so then he should make sure not to stop at a negative note. Don't end on a negative note, but the Baal Koreh, it's not relevant to him. So the Mefarshim write all kinds of things that even those things that seem to us very, very negative, positive spin, and just try to switch things around. But, lemaise, when there's a chiyuv in town, there's a simcha. Bar mitzvah, wedding, whatever it is, and you want to add more people, very important guests, and you must add more chiyuvim. Lemaise, one can be mekel and can stop at things which don't seem to be so good. And you should start with something which is positive if you can. And if you can't, you can't. The kpeida, everybody is makpidan not to do this in the middle of the toichecha, in the middle of the rebuke, in Parshas Bechukoisai, Parshas Kisavo, that no one stops. That's from the Kadmonim, but in other areas, if there's a chiyuv, one can be mekel. It's important to note, very interesting, that this kpeida, to end on a good note, is not just when you're reading in the Torah, b'tzibu, in shul. It's even when you're reading by yourself, you're reading a chapter in the Navi. Make sure you end on a positive note. And in Minhagi Achsam Sofer, it's brought that he was bimakpid even in divrei chulin, not matters of kedusha, when you're reading a pasuk, to make sure you never end on a negative note. I just want to end with, since it's our first shir after the long Ben Azmanim, and now we're going back full force, Emet Hashem, to learning. Important to know the following Sam Sofer. 4 times we find that Masechtot of Shas end with a statement we all are familiar with, and we say it every Shabbos. Talmidei Chachamim, Marbim, Shalom, ba'olam. Talmidei Chacham increase peace throughout the world. Shneimar, al tikre banaich, ela bonaich. So banaich, bet, nun, yud, chaf, is an acronym for the Masechtot that end with this statement. Bet is brachos, nun is nazir, yud is yevamos, kaf is ksubis, and it also appears in Tamid Daf Leiv, Lamed Beis, the heart of the matter. Abba Yisai, I want to ask you something. What does this mean? Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam? I remember when I was a kid, Israel signed a peace treaty with Egypt. You know who signed this deal? Prime Minister Begin. Years passed and we signed another peace treaty with Jordan. Who signed it? Prime Minister. A few years ago, the current Prime Minister signed with 4 Arab countries. I don't recall Chazon Ish coming out of the shul, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Reb Yoshev, Shteiman, Gedolei Hador, and say, where are you going? I'm going to sign with our enemies. Talmidei Chachamim do not sign peace agreements with any countries. It's either the presidents, prime ministers, or heads of the army. What does it do with Talmidei Chachamim? They're stuck in the shul. They're in the best medrash, they're sitting and learning. They don't increase peace in the world. How do they do it? Says the Chassam Sofer, in Droshes Chassam Sofer, year Tav Kuf Nun Daled in Parshas Zachor. Every single year, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decrees on Rosh Hashanah how much death will be in the world. All kinds of midos, how much busha, embarrassment there will be in the world. How much chutzpah, how much machloikes, how much war will be in the world. And whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed must be fulfilled, 100%. There's going to be a certain quota of machloikes this year. A certain amount of war there's going to be. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed on Rosh Hashanah, there will be. But it doesn't have to be there out there in the battlefield. There's another battlefield. Megillah Daf Tesvav Amud Beis, Chazal say, Talmidei Chachamim, what do? Asukin b'milchamta shel Torah. They're engaged in the war of Torah. That's what it's called. Kiddushin Daf Lamed Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim, you see them when they're arguing? It looks like they're enemies. Oivim. The Seder is over. They finish, they go outside, hugging each other, and now they look like Oyhavim. They are great lovers. In other words, when you sit in Beis HaMedrash and this guy says, Treif! No, it's kosher! Tameh! No, it's Toro! And they argue and argue and argue. That's a machlokes. And whenever you take machlokes and you bring into the Beis Medrash this type of permitted machlokes, it decreases the machlokes outside Beis HaMedrash. When you have milchamta shel Torah, you have the war of Torah, it reduces the war outside the Beis HaMedrash, thereby increasing peace in the world. Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam, by increasing the war inside the Beis HaMedrash, but that's a wonderful war to have. That's the war HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects us to have, and by that they reduce the war out there. We so need to be marbim shalom ba'olam. It's a year and a half that we are in war. Not just an external war with our enemies around, an internal war. We need shalom. And how is the best way? What is the best way to increase shalom ba'olam? It's by being those Talmidei Chachamim going into Batei Midrashos and being engaged in the war of Torah. Mitzvah Hashem, just want to share with you, Bekarov, a new sefer. This sefer will be called Ve'halachta Bidrachav, walk in his ways. Chazal tell us in the Midrashim in Yerushalmi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps his entire Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills all the mitzvahs. So I found over the years hundreds of mitzvahs, Deraisa Derabanon, Minhagim he even keeps, Midos Toivis, and I collected them all. And it comes out that every time you do a mitzvah, you do two for the price of one. First of all, you did what they told you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded you to do a mitzvah, and you did it. But it comes out where whenever you do a mitzvah, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself does the mitzvah, you do something else. The 8th positive mitzvah in the count of the Rambam is Ve'halachta bidrachav, walk in his ways. It's a mitzvah from the Torah. So when you do a mitzvah that Kodesh Baruch Hu does, not only did you do what they told you, you actually did another positive mitzvah in the Torah, walk in his ways. However, the statement that Chazal say, Kodesh Baruch Hu's Mekayim the mitzvahs, seems to contradict certain behaviors as if that we see from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's many, many questions there, many. And resolutions to those questions from Rishonim and Achronim. There's answers that Baruch Hashem on this topic Maran Reb Chaim Kanievsky gave, and an essay from Basher Weiss, Shlita, my Rebbe. And it's a fascinating topic and input from many Gedolei Yisrael Ledorosayim. So if anyone wants to be involved, we're going to print. Anyone who wants to be involved with a dedication or just to help the project come out, בכבוד גדול. אחינו כל בית ישראל הנסונים בצער ובשיבה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבש, המקום ירחם עליהם. ויוציאם מצער ולבוכם, ואפילו לא יראו משיבו לגאולה השתו, בעגולו ובזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן.